Right, welcome back, Delboy's Garage. This is Project Bonneville. We're going to do number 4 tonight. This is going to be a change out of the rear brake pads. Pretty straightforward job. I'm going to show you it in pretty much as real time as I can. Also going to give the caliper a little clean up because it's quite dusty and horrid in there. And once they're in, that's the service inside side of things done, so we can get stuck into the suspension lowering and a few other jobs as well. Okay, so there we are. Stick around, stay tuned. Let's show you how to change a pair of pads in the back. Pretty easy. Okay, on the caliper unit itself, I've taken the left-hand silencer off in this instance, just to give us eyes on it so that we can see it properly. You don't have to do that. The silencer kind of sits here. You can do it from up and under if you know your bike, but better just whip it off. So you've got 4 fasteners you need to take hold of today. You've got 2 fasteners that hold the caliper to the bike. We need to get those off in a minute. And these are the 2 pins here and here that actually hold the pads in. Now, whilst the whole thing is still built up and it's still on the bike, it's easier for me to get an Allen key, 5mm Allen key in there and just crack those 2 pins than it is trying to crack them later when the caliper's in your hand and you're trying to do it all in one go. So while it's all held still, use the fact that it's bolted to the bike as a bit of a jig. Saves a lot of grief. Now these are an external thread bolt. I'll show you as they come out in a sec. I'm going to do a bit of cleaning as well. Okay. Now we put these on last night in the last video, torqued them up to 40 Newton meters, which is the correct torque. So they'll come off nicely because we even copper slipped them at the same time. So even if you're doing it 6 months later or a year later, it'll be fine. Now, get those off. And it's the same little trick as yesterday. Rotate back and forth. It's kind of that action on the caliper, just gently, just a little tiny bit. And that allows you to drop it off. Okay, so these 2 pins, first of all, let's just withdraw those out. That's right, it's a swivel head Allen key, it's supposed to do that. Now once the thread clears the body, you notice as well you don't have to break the hydraulics open, it's not necessary. Absolutely not important. Now get that to its last point and give it, put that in. Now it's the same action as before, give it a twist that way and you'll lock the tool into it and you can just wiggle it and withdraw that pin straight out. Same as that one. I'm holding the pads in place round here quite simply because if they're nice and held in, they're all going to drop out a big heap on the floor. There we go. Okay, both pins withdrawn. I'll show you a little trick on cleaning those up in a minute. Now the pads here can be withdrawn. First one comes out that way. Second one out there. That's it. I'm going to deal with that in a second. As you can see here, they are, now it's quite successful. I'm quite glad we got these out at this point because as you can see there's no pad material worn away to the metal. There's not been any business of metal or anything. Sorry, pants on your toe. There's a little tiny shimmer, just a shim of pad material left everywhere. When you take them out and you've got a big shiny bit of metal worn off, you know that that metal against your disc has been damaging it. So changing them in time is important. Now before you go any further, always make sure that the ones you've bought are the same ones, which they are. So we'll put those in a sec. But before we fit the new pads, they're going in the bin. I think it's quite wise to give everything a clean up. It's a great opportunity to give everything a good clean up. And all I use, as I've always done right back since beginning, is these are a 2 piston caliper, just the 2 there. And this here is salt from the roads. All this is nasty and it gets all inside there and doesn't do any good for their movement in and out. So just reach over, give the foot pedal, get it close on there, a bit of a poke. There we are, and they're both moving nicely. So there's no issue with those at all. But don't poke them out too far because obviously if you do that you won't get them back in. But what you're looking to do is get them out far enough so you see this shiny line. And that is, I guess you could call that the gum line. And that's where you need to clean. Get this cack off the outside of those pistons because the new ones, the new pads going in are thicker, so we're going to have to push these back far further than we did before, meaning that that cack line is going to get pushed into the seals, and that's all bad. So quite simple, it's just a little bit of housekeeping. All I've got in there is dish soap water, really hot, mama's old toothbrush. Get in there and get all that stuff off. Now if you want to be really meticulous, you can strip the caliper, take these out and polish them. It's a good thing to do, there's nothing wrong with it, but it is a task that your average bike shop won't do for you unless you pay them large sums of money, because it's just a labour job. Now you can push that, if you watch this plate that they bolt onto, it's on a ram here, so you can just push them off. See? Push it away, not too far, I don't want to push them off completely. Just push it out enough and get your toothbrush in there. As you can see, we're cleaning all that brake dust and road salt out of the area, which is all good. It's just housekeeping, folks. It's what you need to be doing, keep your bike safe and on the road. I got an email this very evening from somebody who ridden a bike for 7 years. I won't name him and shame him, but he's been riding his bike for 7 years, never touched these calipers, and he's gone and done this, given them a good clean, a couple of tins of brake cleaner, and apparently they work like new. That's what it's all about. If you're going to put new brake pads in, why not give them a good clean? So I'm going to clean these up, rinse them all off. Join me in a minute, we'll just plug the pads back in. Right, just going to rinse this off. Don't worry, Pen, I'll put your toothbrush back in the bathroom after.
It's alright, I swapped it for yours.
Thank you.
You think I'm joking?
No, I don't. Right, there we go, folks, that's it. Now, and your best garage tools, raggedy old towel. Now in the winter, this is something, I think we all know this now, this is one of our bigger videos, is the brake cleaning issue. You should be doing this on probably an annual basis at least, I reckon. Get your calipers off, get them cleaned around the gun line, washed out, and ready to put your new pads in. Right. Okay, here we are. Good enough. Clean the wheel off a bit now. Okay, new pads. Now the little trick for you. I'm going to show you a little trick how to clean these. Coming over the bench. Right, time for a Delboy's Garage tip. We haven't had Delboy's Garage tip for ages. Right, what I'm doing here, that's the brake pins, okay? Now the brake pins fit, the last centimetre of that fits into the caliper to hold it, and this bit is in the thread. So this section here is the section across which the pads will slide when they're actuating, and there's always corrosion and cack and all sorts of crap on there. So what we do, pop the last centimetre of it in your drill chuck, like that, Chuck. Hey, up, Chuck. Okay, set it running, lock it off. And there we are, absolutely spotlessly clean brake pins. Oops, every time. And that last little section, you can just do that by hand. Nothing slides up and down, that's just not the issue. I'll just show you again. First centimetre of it in the drill. Nice and tight. Set it spinning. There we are. Two absolutely spotlessly clean brake pins every time. Even if they're rusty and corroded and horrid. You can do a little file on there then and just hold a file. But they are now, you feel that, Pat?
That looks lovely.
That's silk. Right, there we go. That was garage tips. We love them. Right, first job, push these right back. Push the pistons right back in, having already made completely sure that you have no cack on that gum line. You have to work them back one at a time like that. Get them right back out of the way so that you've got space for the new brake pads. Don't use tools, there's no need to put a pair of grips on here and put bite marks or anything in it, just use your fingers. And if you just work one after the other like that, they'll wiggle back nicely. And don't worry about the master cylinder on the other side overflowing, because it shouldn't have any more fluid in it than they were when they were full at the factory. So there's always an upper and a lower mark, and that's fine. And there we are, right back out of the way. So we pop those ones in first. There's a little spring in the bottom there. You just make sure that's still in situ since you've done all the scrubbing and cleaning. Push those down onto the spring and in place in there. Now that will just sit there for a minute without the pins in. Before we go putting the pins in, good old Loctite anti-seize. Loctite being the brand, not to be confused with Threadlock, which is another product entirely. Just going to put a little bit of that on each one. Don't go using grease obviously, because it gets hot and it melts, and then it will melt onto the brakes and could result in a accident. Okay, there we go. Pop the two holes, go through there, and it goes all the way through before the thread meets. There we go. Bit fiddly, you just got to reach in and get them to seat. The other pad. Now the other pad goes on that little pin there and wields its way in separately. Let's take that out a bit. There we are. Just click into place till everything meets. You can kind of feel your way. I'll put that in the end actually. That's a bummer, that one's gone in. Here we go. That's it. And then just wind them in gently, and the excess copper slip will work its way to the outside where you can just wipe it off. But you know the thread that's gone in there is coated with it, which is all good. Now we just do that like last night with everything else on the oil change. Hand tight like that, don't need to be any tighter than that for the minute. And now we just need to make sure there's a gap big enough in there to get over that. So we're just going to lever those back, pull them back out of the way so I can get them in. That's it. So with a gap there, roughly big enough as the disc, hit it on. Now I'm just going to pop one of them in gently, just to hold it in place while I re-copper slip the other one. Put a fresh amount on. I like this stuff, as I said before, because working in a busy workshop, when you're down on the floor, you can tread on things like tubes of paste and that, and then they end up squirting across the floor and you've cost yourself all of the product, whereas that, tough as old boots. Right. There we are. And that's it. You've just changed the set of brake pads. It is as easy as that, folks. Honestly, piece of cake. Take some time, do a good job. Torque wrench, we all know what this is, 40 Newton meters. And we come up first to about, we'll do them at 30 first. 1, 35. There we go, and finally the third effort, 40 Newton meters. There we are. Now what I've done, I've revisited that second one, because when you've got two items, I said this on the front brake caliper, when you've got two bolts that draw up together, if it's a single bolt like that or that, you click it once and that's it. If it's two bolts that are pulling something in simultaneously, pull one in at 40, click it, pull the other in at 40, and that one will be loose because it draws it up together. So there are occasions when you do 2 or 3 checks, there, there, one more, there, There, that's it. And what that's doing is just checking that they're both at 40 and that one hasn't pulled the other in. So there we are. Final job. This is really, really, really important. Come around the other side, man. I want to show this while it's like it is. Come around the front if you can. Right there. Got my space in this garage.
I don't
right. If you go to press your brake pedal when you've just done this, you remember you've pushed those pads right back. Nothing's going to work. So give them 2 or 3 pumps. They are. It's now solid. Always the same, and it's the same with the front. If you do the front, always pump the lever out to make sure that the pads where that have been pushed right back out of the way have been brought back out adjacent to the disc so they can do the job. Because when a brake gets actuated, the movement of the pads is no more than about 1 millimetre either side. Simple as that. And even the same with these sliding calipers that are on pins. They can be offset to one side. Honestly, always pump them out afterwards. Really important. Okay, do the old marker paint trick. Just a little dot on the caliper and on the body, same as we did on the front. And it doesn't matter where it goes, as long as it goes on there somewhere. There we are. And finally, the most important thing is to double check those pins. Now in this instance, I don't like torquing these up because I've never had one of these come out. The torque setting is ridiculously low. Just a 5mm Allen key. Just nip them up, folks. Honestly, this is one of those things you can just nip them up. All things have a torque setting if you really want to be sure, but the torque setting for these is it's about 8 newtons. It's nothing. So we'll just pop it in there. That's it. They're good enough. Now again, you can marker paint them if you really want to, but in my life, in my riding career of 32 years, I've never had these pins undo themselves. The thread that comes out is a whole centimetre and it's never going to unwind itself. It just doesn't. If anything, they get stuck in. That's the worst thing, which is why we copper slip them. So there it is. It's as simple as that, folks. Brake pads fitted, job done. Do run them in, because remember we've got a very slightly scored disc on this, 7,500 miles. A previous rider that was quite heavy on the back brakes. There's some score marks in this, which means the profile, if you look microscopically at that disc, is kind of wavy, where the grooves are. The pads are dead flat, so at the moment they're only touching the peaks of the grooves on the disc, and therefore for a mite of time, maybe 50 miles, they'll only be marginally touching. So you'll only get this affair where you'll get reduced braking, and they will take probably 20 to 50 miles to bed in until the peaks of the pads have all worn into the peaks, or the flatness of the pad has worn into the grooves, and they siamese each other so that they fit and you get full 100% braking force on the rear. So always run new brake pads in. Don't expect them to perform perfectly first time, and don't expect them to perform at full power straight off the bat. Like tyres, like everything else, run them in properly. Okay, there we are. Rear brake pads, pretty much the same for the front, same principle. It's more or less the same caliper. If you need any help or guidance or advice or tips, give us a shout. Brakes are really important. I'm always happy to help anytime. I'm online every day. Take it easy, folks. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you for the next one.